Video 12, using the two special limits. So after finishing the last video on proving the limit as x goes to 0 of sin of x over x, I realized I really wanted to also include at least one example. So creating this video here, a short one, just to show one example of using the two special limits. I like this problem because it also uses our properties of limits that we learned earlier. So what we have here is the limit as x goes to 0 of 2 times the sine of x times 1 minus the cosine of x over 3x squared. And remember that our two special limits were the limit as x goes to 0 of sine of x over x equals 1, and the limit as x goes to 0 of 1 minus the cosine of x over x equals 0. So what we want to try and do is rearrange this using properties of limits so that I have one or perhaps both of those special limits. First thing I see is I have a 2 in the numerator and a 3 in the denominator, both of those constants. I can go ahead and just pull that out front. And then I have the limit as x goes to 0 of sine of x times 1 minus the cosine of x over x squared. But instead of writing it as the sine of x times 1 minus the cosine of x over x squared, I'd like to write this as 2/3 times the limit as x goes to 0, sine of x over x times 1 minus the cosine of x over x. Right, so x squared, writing that as x times x, and then just using each one of those x's in the denominator. Because I'm multiplying those two fractions, I could multiply, straight across, numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, and get x times x is x squared. One more properties of limits, I could take the 2/3, and I could take each one of those two fractions having its own limit. The limit as x goes to 0 of sine of x over x, times the limit as x goes to 0 of 1 minus the cosine of x over x. And from our special limits, we see that this is 2/3 times the limit as x goes to 0 of sine of x over x. We learned that that's 1. And the limit as x goes to 0 of 1 minus the cosine of x over x. We know that that's 0. And 2/3 times 1 times 0 is just 0.